In this video, we're going to learn about grids, guidelines, and rulers and how we can set them, create them, interact them, delete them. First of all, we need to look at the View drop-down menu where you'll find options for a grid, guidelines, and rulers. And currently they're not turned on. And so if I click on rulers, you'll see that it'll turn a ruler on my workspace. So I've got a ruler along the left-hand side and along the top. And it's showing me kind of the 0 and the 0 horizontal and vertical intersect at the center of your embroidery hoop. And the closer you zoom in on your workspace, the more detail that will show up on the ruler. So the more specific or the more accuracy you can see the little numbers. Now, if I go to the View drop-down menu, you can see now rulers are checked as being turned on. Now we'll click to turn on the grid. And while we're at it, we'll click on View and turn on the guidelines. And so what we can see now, the guidelines are these dark blue lines, which intersect at sort of the vertical and horizontal along the 0 axis. And we can add our own guidelines if we want to. To add a guideline, I simply left click over top of my ruler space and drag to insert one. And then I can click on that guideline at any time and I guess move it to a new location, and I can come back to my ruler and left click and drag to make another one. And you can make as many guidelines as you like. If you grab on the left ruler and drag, you'll create a vertical guideline. If I grab on the top ruler and drag, I get a horizontal guideline. And so I've created quite a few new guidelines to my workspace now. Now, I have a grid on my screen also, and I find it a little bit hard to see in the colors that it's set in right now. And so one thing we'll take a look at is under the Tools drop-down menu, there's an options setting. And when I turn this on, it brings up a window. And there's several things that you can control in the software here. And we won't look at all of them in this video, but what we will look at is the Colors/Sizes tab. And on this tab, you get to choose the item that you want to control. In this case, let's click on the grid. So it shows me that my grid is set on light backgrounds to have this dark color, and on light backgrounds, on light backgrounds to have this dark color, and on dark backgrounds to have this light color. And if I don't like the color that's selected, I can click on the little window and choose a new color. So if I make yellow as the grid color and say apply, now you can see kind of more clearly the little yellow dots that represent the size of my grid. And so that's one of the benefits of working with the Tools and Options menu under the Color Sizes tab, where you can control things like the color of the grid, or you have the ability to set the color of your guidelines. Now, for guidelines, we have lock guidelines and normal guidelines. So the difference is the lock ones you can't select and you can't edit, whereas the normal ones you could. Now, if it's showing me on light background that it's going to have this dark blue color. If I wanted to change that, I could choose it to be, let's say, red and apply. So now you can see all of the guidelines that I've created in their colors, the grid, the guidelines, and the rulers. Now, if you right click over top of the ruler, you have the ability to choose, well, first of all, add a new guideline. And here it shows me that I can add a new horizontal, a new vertical, or even a diagonal guideline. And so see how it's added a new diagonal guideline. And right where I clicked, in other words, if I come over here and right click and say add new guideline, diagonal, that guideline got added at the place on the ruler where I clicked. Now, again, if I right click over top of the ruler, I can choose the guideline editor. And with the guideline editor, come on up, with the guideline editor, you can see all of the guidelines that we've created. So there's several horizontal ones, a couple of vertical ones, some diagonal ones, and see how I can click on them to highlight them, and it tells me information like their position or whatever. And in this case, you could choose to make them locked, which would make them not selectable, and they would always be kind of just set where they are. You could make them hidden so that they would be sort of currently not visible. You could choose to delete them. So if I wanted to, I could click on a guideline and just choose delete and remove that guideline from my workspace. Of course, I can control mathematically the kind of where they're located on the X or Y axis. And if it's a diagonal one, at what angle that it's going on. And so that's your guideline editor. Another way to remove guidelines is simply to click on the ones that are editable and then drag them back onto your ruler and off the other side, and that removes them. So you just drag that guideline until it's gone. Generally speaking, we don't remove the center. So those guidelines are the default ones that are always there. And of course, you can hide them or not see them. So for example, if I go under the View drop-down menu, I can turn off guidelines or turn them back on again. I also have the ability, if I right-click over top of my ruler, to see the guideline options. And this is another place where you can choose to have them visible or not visible. But more importantly, here you can choose to snap enabled. So first of all, I'll make them visible and I'll turn on snap enabled and say OK. And what you'll see now, I need to create something. So I'm just going to use the create star tool and create a star shape. Now, when I have that selected, if I was to click and drag, notice how it snaps right to the center of my two guidelines. And if I bring it over here, it'll snap to the edge of that one. Or if I keep bringing it, it'll snap to the center of that one. So the idea here is snap to grids is enabled, which makes it easy to get things to quickly align to your guidelines. Now, sometimes you're creating your own shapes, and that's more trouble than it's worth. So that's why you have the ability to right-click, get up your guideline options, and turn snap enabled off. In which case now, if I bring my star, yes, I can still set it at center, but it doesn't snap there. I'll have to move it, until I can see that it's in the place that I want. So that's how you can, first of all, turn on and off the rulers, grids, and guidelines, how you can use the Tools options menu to change the colors of your grids and your guidelines, and then how you can use the right-click over top of a ruler to get your little secondary menu to add new guidelines, get your guideline editors, and set your guideline options.